So a lot of times when we are solving problems or we have the formula and we're giving information, we're going to have to sometimes rearrange the equation so we can solve for another variable. Right? So sometimes if they give you the area and they give you the length and the width, you have to solve for the height. Or if they give you the area and they give you the radius, you have to solve for the height. So you have to rearrange your formula so you can solve for a variable on the other side. And we always have to do that in math, right? And in chemistry, and in not bio, we don't use a lot of math, but in physics, right? So rearranging formula, we have to do what we call a reverse bedmass opposite operation. So you're isolating for a letter. You're going to have to move the other terms to the other side by doing opposite operation, but following the reverse bedmass, or what we call as SAMDEP. Okay, it's a reverse of bedmass. You read it backward. So whatever you do last, usually when doing order of operation, you're going to get rid of first when you're doing reverse bedmass. Okay? So if the last thing you do here, so let's look at this example, right? You're going to do the square first, then you're going to multiply by 2, then you're going to add the I, correct? Yes, that's what bedmass says. Bedmass says brackets. I don't have brackets here. Exponent, right? So I have to do my exponent, multiplication, then addition. When it comes to isolating, I'm going to have to do the reverse of that. So I want to get rid of the I first, then I'm going to have to divide by 2, then I have to get rid of the square to isolate for P. Do you guys see that? So I'm following the reverse of what I'm used to. So here is the first example. I have A equal P plus I, and the question is asking you to isolate for P. So to isolate for P, what do you have to do here? Bring the I over, and then what does it become? I heard you guys say it. Subtraction. Yes. Right? So I'm moving I over, and the opposite of addition is subtraction. Sorry? It's an I. It's P plus I. Let's quickly go over some operations. So if I have addition, what's the subtraction? What's the opposite of multiplication? What's the opposite of division? Multiplication. What's the opposite of subtraction? Addition. What's the opposite of square? Square root. What's the opposite of cube? Cube root. What's the opposite of square root? Square. Right? So these are the opposite operations. So when you see addition, you know that you're going to have to do subtraction. When you see subtraction, you know that you're going to have to do addition, and so on. So you remember these. Okay? So I have A equals 2P. If I want to isolate for P, what do I do? What's happening between the 2 and the P? Multiplication. So I have to bring the 2 over. It becomes division, because the opposite of multiplication is division. So that's going to be A divided by 2 equals P. Yes? A equals P squared. I want to isolate P, so I want to leave P alone. I don't want that square. How do I get rid of a square? Square root. So that's going to be the square root. Anytime you square root one side, you have to square root both sides, right? So that's going to be square root of A equals to P, because the square root and the square, they cancel each other. So the next one is A equals 2p squared plus I. So here's where reverse bed mass is going to happen, right? What's the first thing you want to get rid of? The addition. Guys, eyes on me, please, for a second. If I give you a value for p, if I tell you p is 10, what do? You sub it in, and then you do 10 squared, then you multiply by 2, then you add whatever I is. Is that right? So your order is square, multiplication, then addition. Yes? Exponent, multiplication, addition. That's what you do for, right? So now when I want to get rid of things, I have to start by getting rid of the last thing I did. It's like you're backtracking your steps. Okay? If you lost something, right? Usually you go to the last place you were at and then you move backward from there, right? This is what we're doing here. So I start by getting rid of the addition first. So bring the addition over, it becomes subtraction. Then, after I get rid of the addition, I'm going to have to get rid of the multiplication. So that becomes a division. Yes? Because multiplication, opposite of multiplication is division. Now, to get rid of the square, what do? You're going to have to square root. When you square root, make sure that you put the a minus I over 2 all inside the square root. Even that division by 2. Eyes on the board for a second. Don't write this here. This is not the same as this. They're not the same. This is not the same as this. So it's important where your square root ends, and it's important how long the square root is. That means a minus I divided by 2 are calculated first, then I'm square rooting. This means I square root the a, I subtract the I, and then I divide by 2. They're not the same thing. They're not going to give you the same answer, and this is why order of operation is important in math, right? So you have to be careful how you write your square root, and I'm going to be very picky when it comes to this. If you write something this or close to it, no, I can't count it as right because it's not right. Is that clear, guys? Yeah? So you have to make sure that your roots are long enough, right? If you want it to go all the way to the end of the I, if you want it to go all the way to the end of the 2. Okay? And I'm not being mean, trust me, this is the only way I can teach you how to do this. Are you guys okay with this? Okay. So, the next question is asking you to isolate for B. So let's look at the example. I have C equals 2 bracket B minus N close bracket. If you were to do order of operation here, what do you do first? You do the whatever is inside the bracket, right? So you're going to do the subtraction first, then you're going to multiply by 2, yes? Yes, because order of operation says I have to do my brackets first, right? So when you're isolating, what's the first thing you want to get rid of? No. Because it's in the brackets, right? Because remember that the first thing you're going to do regularly is this, then you're going to do this, right? When we're doing opposite operation, The first thing I want to get rid of is this, and then this. Right? Backtracking your steps. Okay? So to get rid of the multiplication by 2, what do I do? Divide by 2. So it's C divided by 2 equals to B minus N. Then bring the minus N over. What does it become? Plus N. Now, again, with respect to fractions as well, it's similar to the square root, okay? There is a difference if I have C over 2 plus N, or if I have C plus N over 2. They do not mean the same thing, and they will not give you the same answer. So be careful how you're writing your fraction, okay? Do I need that bracket that I have in the second question where C equals B over 2 minus N? Do I need that bracket? Is it needed? No, right? It doesn't make any difference. So pretend that there's no brackets there. If you're doing operation, like regular bed mass, what's the first thing you do? So if you know the value of B and the value of N, what's the first thing you do? You put it? Okay, and how would you do that? Like, what would you do? So pretend there's no brackets, guys. The brackets here is not going to make any difference, okay? Pretend there's, that's what I said at the beginning. Pretend that there's no brackets here. You have B divided by 2 minus N. When you are doing your bed mass, when I give you values for B and N, what do you do first? You divide by 2 first, right? So this is your first step. Right? Your first step is going to be, you're going to divide by 2, and then you're going to subtract N. When we're doing the reverse of that, where do I start? What do I get rid of first? N, because that's the last thing I did. And then I'm going to get rid of that division by 2. So you see how the steps have flipped, right? So the last thing I did is the first thing I'm going to get rid of. So if I bring the N, the negative N over, what does it become? Plus N. Are we okay with that so far? Now what do I do with the division by 2? Yeah, it becomes multiplication by 2. What do I multiply by 2? C plus N, right? So C plus N, everything is multiplied by 2. And here's where I'm forced to put that bracket, because I want to make sure that both C plus N are multiplied by 2. And are you going to tell me, is there a difference between writing this and writing this? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. This one is only twice of C plus N. This is twice of C and twice of N, right? Because technically, if I distribute this, there's twice of N as well, right? So there is a difference. The brackets are important. C equals B minus N squared. In regular operation, what's the first thing you do? Inside the bracket, right? So you do inside the bracket first. which is b minus n first. And then you do your square, correct? Because it said bed mass, brackets first. Okay, so what's the first thing you want to get rid of now? The square. And to get rid of the square, what do? Square root. So the first thing you're going to do in this case, you're going to get rid of this first, and then you're going to get rid of this second. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to square root c, and that's going to equal to b minus n. You guys agree with me? Because the opposite of square is square root. Okay? Then, bring the negative n over, it becomes a plus n. So that's going to be square root of c plus n equals b. Or that. Which one? Like this? Or like this? So I have the square root of c, and then I'm bringing over the n. Is that how I write it? Yes. Right? That's why I'm doing the square root first. I'm doing the square root of c only. Only. And then I'm bringing the n over. You guys will understand, this is one of the hardest things for students to see. Right? I mean, someone who's experienced in this and who have done it so many times, right, it seems normal. It's like, you know, when you go to work and you do the things that you do usually, right, which is a routine, something that you do every day. But if you're not experienced with this, you're going to find it difficult. Because a little change, right, is going to make a big difference. So here's what I want you to do. Get in groups. Find the answer for the last one. And I want you, so there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Make groups of 3s. Okay? Get in groups of 3s.